Well, Correctional Services spokesperson Singabakho Nxumalo joins us now. Very good evening to you, Mr. Nxumalo. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to The Full View.
A very good evening, and thank you for having us.
I'm sure you've just seen that soundbite there of the Matthews family saying that the recommendation to release Donovan Moodley on parole is an insult to justice, for the family. Can you confirm this? What's the department's reaction to this?
I was in that particular session. It was indeed a high-profile case. So there were oral submissions today, both by the offender and the victims of crime. So everything was taken into consideration, and it has to go into the profile of an inmate before the process moves to the next step. But the conclusion today was that the offender has to attend to other programs. In our language, we call it further profiling, meaning there are other interventions that must be made before that profile is to be brought back to the Parole Board. But here we're dealing with someone who's serving a life sentence. From the Parole Board, the profile will go to the National Council for Correctional Services. It will dissect it, make its own recommendations. Thereafter, it will move to the minister, who will eventually make the final decision.
I know that there will be extensive consultations and so many processes for this to happen. But then does the Parole Board, or rather will the Parole Board see reason and understand the feelings of the family and what they're going through right now?
Parole boards are independent structures, so they have a duty to deal with whatever is presented before them. Here, all sides, be it the offender, the victims of crime, and evaluate everything, but they are assisted by what is contained in that particular profile. I think here, one thing which may have assisted the cause was the victim-offender dialogue, which the victims of crime, in this case, the Matthews family, turned down twice in 2019. So it has delayed the process, but we are confident that eventually, it will take us to the conclusion, because the aim is to make it a point that all inmates, after serving the minimum required time, are considered for parole placement, and a decision has to be made whether a person is suitable to be placed back into society or not.
What is it that the Parole Board considers, when making a determination to admit an inmate to bail?
What's happening is that for every inmate who's admitted in a correctional facility, we draw what we call a correctional sentence plan, which then guides the inmate's journey throughout the rehabilitation processes. It has to explain each and every detail to say the years that the inmate ought to spend, he will be undertaking the following programs. But there are also specialists in our employ, such as social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, who must continuously assess an inmate. Then they also make their own notes. So all those reports then go into the profile of an inmate, which then assist the Parole Board when they have to make a recommendation in case of a lifer, to say, having gone through what is contained in the profile of this offender, this is the recommendation that we are making. But as I've said, that this is a lifer, there's still another structure called the National Council for Correctional Services, which also consists of different specialists. It even involves sitting judges of the High Court. I think it's about 2 of them. So they go through that, and when they pick up certain things where perhaps they may need clarity, or things that they will also say that perhaps there's a need for an inmate to also undertake a particular program, they will say that. But then the recommendation that they make will then go to the minister, who eventually will make a decision. So it's an elaborative process, quite detailed. It is there to make it a point that the risk is managed, so that you don't place a person out who is still danger to society.
Mr. Nxumalo, we're out of time, unfortunately, but just briefly, we're really out of time. One of the processes I understand is the victim-offender dialogue that needs to take place before an inmate is admitted to bail. What if the family or the victim does not want to engage in such a VOD? Will this not be the final arbiter? Will the inmate be denied bail as a result of such a refusal?
It is one of the requirements. In this case, the victims turned it down twice. Unfortunately, we just have to indicate that such facility was afforded, but it was turned down by the victim. So it's then becomes a matter of compliance, which unfortunately is something that we don't prefer, but if you cannot force people to participate on it.
All right, Mr. Nxumalo, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Correctional Services spokesperson there, Singabakho Nxumalo, joining us via Zoom.